Ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all to the third edition of the CII Cloud Summit. I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers to please come on the stage.
Let me move to Kalyan next. Kalyan, I wanted to get your perspectives in terms of how AI can be helping in the growth of the data center in the cloud industry. And if you can also very briefly touch upon the impact on generative AI.
I think B.K. Murthy gave a very detailed introduction to the role of cloud, but let me take a little bit of a more macro view on it. So just before going into this, I was driving from the airport. My cab driver, I told him the hotel name, and he spoke in a very local accent to his smartphone, asking for the directions to go to the hotel. I thought it will not recognize because I myself could not understand what he was saying. But it gave him the directions instantly, even though his accent was very different from typically what you would expect a smartphone to understand. That tells the power of AI. How did that happen? It happened because it has learned over a period of time by compiling and processing the data of millions and millions of people, probably in a similar accent. So that tells you the power of AI and the scale at which it is. So in a little bit of a broader context, if you go AI today, it's not new. I mean, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, we all have been using it without knowing it. I mean, how many people in this room have been using Siri, Alexa for probably 5, 6 years? And you can again apply the same technique that I just mentioned to how it is learning your likings and dislikes and all of these things and generating what you're looking for, right? At the end of it, beneath that, it's what is generative, nothing but generative AI. Again, in the macro view of AI, right? So from a data center and a cloud perspective today, if you look at all the cloud service providers and all the large technology companies, including companies who provide operating systems, today are making operating systems AI native. All the cloud service providers have capabilities that are cloud native. So which means pretty much whatever investments globally that are going into the field of technology, especially in the context of cloud, are geared primarily towards AI in being able to process, understand, intercept, and generate. That's the power of cloud. So over the last decade and a half, cloud has evolved to a point where we today, for any organization, cloud is not an option, but a competitive advantage. It's a mandate in a way. So cloud provided that speed, flexibility. Now, AI combined with leveraging the power of cloud is bringing in that ecosystem of ease, right? Being able to give you that holistic experience. What would have taken you a lot of time to figure out and predict is now happening in fraction of seconds just by voice and gestures. We are talking about now not just AI. I mean, Apple has just announced spatial computing, right? It's the new era. So all of that under the larger umbrella of AI, if you look at it, is going to generate a huge, huge amount of data. Now, I think as Sunil mentioned in his introductory remarks, a few things that will play a significant amount of role is IoT, which have been in the process of being implemented around the world. India has done quite a bit in this space. All of the data being generated and consumed has to be put to work. I think less has been done, a lot yet has to be done. This is where I think the role of 5G plays a significant role in being able to consume significant, 100-fold data compared to a 4G, for example, and being able to consume and allow it to process. And then the next layer is the edge. That's where your primary processing of the data is happening. And then transmitting the data to the core for larger volumes of processing and backups and storage and all of that, as B.K. Murthy was saying earlier, right? So this is pretty much, and then within the data center is where connected cloud, across data centers, across states, across countries, where the data is processed and decisions are being taken in a minute. So this is what's happening in the cloud, and now a little bit more macro. What I want to say is now, what's the impact of this on the data centers? The densities at which the high performance computing that needs to happen is growing exponentially, right? If you look at the latest products that are available from NVIDIA or even Intel, for example, the latest Habana Gaudi servers, which are specifically introduced for AI, the amount of power that is required by these machines and to process these kind of volumes is going to be huge. So the per rack density for what you need in a data center is going to grow tenfold, 10, 20, 30-fold. I mean, there are implementations as high as 100 kilowatts per rack. So what does it mean? This is going to be huge, which means, going green is going to be even more vital and even more critical moving forward. So I think in this context, what I'm always passionate about is, I think, driving some of this high performance computing that consumes a lot of power to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. This is what's happening in US. Places like Columbus, Ohio, for example, is implementing large-scale data centers. I think India needs to do the same. I think we need to distribute our computing power to places where it's more greener. So the move towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities is inevitable. I think we have to do that. So in a larger sense, Sunil, I think that's what I would say.
Thanks, Kalyan. I think two important aspects you talked about. When you look at this whole powerful combination of cloud and AI, the ease and experience that it brings, that's so important. You talked about how cloud service providers are making their operating systems AI native. So you have cloud native, AI native. I also hope that they eventually look at making it sustainability native, because you touched upon an important dimension about going green. With so much of compute and storage, you talked about the per density rack going up. So I think that's going to be a very important aspect as we see more data centers getting installed in India. Thanks, Mr. Kalyan. Let me move to Kalyan. So Kalyan, can you share with us how AI can be used in the process of developing digital India through the context of cloud?
See, I think in today's time, especially when we are talking about artificial intelligence and India being the most populous country in the world, and the roadmap of AI, especially, you can see the focus all the way from the top. There is a specific budget for AI this year to establish 3 centers of excellences. Countries, some of the largest educational institutions are working. But I think if you look at it, we are still scratching the surface. For a country like India, I think we have a lot of responsibility, a big role to play, and we need to lead the way, at least, moving forward, as more user applications. One is the technology, but how do you apply artificial intelligence, right? I think this is where I think India's role is more critical than the technology itself, the application of artificial intelligence. That's where I think, including how artificial intelligence can be used in farming or by farmers, healthcare, education. We have used to some extent in the smart cities, for example, especially in the surveillance aspect. So as Murthy again said about security, I think it's about, especially there is a significant concern on ethics, on how artificial intelligence can be used, can be applied. We already are suffering with a lot of cyber issues today, and now as the technology gets more complex, more wide, with edge, IoT, you have entry points everywhere, and now if you apply artificial intelligence on top of it, it's just you're compounding the problem. So I think this is where I think India has a significant amount of role to play and be an example to the rest of the world in terms of application of the use cases of artificial intelligence, because I think we have the most complex use cases compared to some of the more structured countries. So that's one aspect in terms of the application. Now, when it comes to, artificial intelligence is going to be a huge ecosystem. Now, if you apply Make in India to it, from a digital India, Make in India perspective, how do we have a role there. We need to make sure that the components that are required and the technology that is required for artificial intelligence we need to become again digitally independent in terms of manufacturing these components, all the way from GPUs, semiconductors that plays a role in enabling artificial intelligence. All of this, there is a lot of focus. I think in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, this evolution needs to accelerate to build an ecosystem that is holistic to develop, to support this artificial intelligence ecosystem. If you look at it, right, I mean, data center globally, I think in the next 25 years, this is just an estimate, I think globally, 25% of the power in the world is going to be consumed by only data centers. Right? So that's going to be huge, and a lot of this is going to be driven by artificial intelligence moving forward. So I think India has a lot of role to play. I think we've done a lot of progress in terms of smart cities and other things, and there's a lot of R&D going on actual applications on citizens' services using artificial intelligence. We need to take that forward. We need to play a role in terms of leading the rest of the world, especially in applications, and also creating a holistic hardware and a component ecosystem locally to become independent, or rather fairly independent, if not all, to take this forward.
Absolutely, Kalyan. I think the PLI scheme, which the government launched a couple of years back, 14 sectors, I think what is very heartening is that the government definitely wants IoT devices to be made in India. Today, most of the chipsets, the modules, they're all coming from outside. And I think one barrier today when it comes to IoT adoption, because IoT adoption will only spur growth of more data, then your AI and cloud obviously will come into play. But as cost of devices get lower, that will spur a lot more adoption, because that's still one barrier today, the cost of IoT devices.
We have to bring the cost down in all aspects of the components that go into this.
And hopefully we'll have our fabs ready in about 5 or 6 years by now.
Hopefully,
from
yes,
now.
yes.
Okay, thanks. Been a great discussion, great insights from all the panelists. We covered quite a lot of dimensions. We talked about use cases. We talked about aspects related to ethics, cloud governance, aspects related to sustainability, generative AI. So a lot that we covered in this 1 hour. It's been a fascinating discussion. Before we end, I just wanted to make an announcement. The live coverage of this particular event is being telecast by 24 Frames Digital at the CII-cloud.com website. So just wanted to inform you all that. Thank you so much. Thank you all panelists for this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kalyan Muppaneni, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, PI Data Centers.